What does an old mining town have to do with an amusement park? To find that answer, all one needs to do is look at the surrounding land around Kings Island. Built at the top of the hill overlooking the Little Miami River, it's only natural that this part of the park be called Rivertown.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted some theme in there that reflected Cincinnati and the river, and we knew we needed a historical area. We wanted it. Most of the theme parks in those days had an historical area, so we just named ours Rivertown. And we put the Flume in there, as I recall, and we had a big restaurant there.
Well, Rivertown was created from the local area of our rivers, the Ohio River, the Miami, Little Miami, and with our great history, we wanted to recreate something that had that theme to it. So we brought the old Flume ride from Coney Island. We put it in that area. We put the train ride with the Indians attacking the train, and
we had a train at Coney Island. I don't know if you remember we call it the CI and LC Coney Island. What was it? CI and LC Railroad. And it's the first time we had any serious animation in Coney Island, and this little train started at Lake Como and ran over a causeway at Lake Como and down the lake and into that woods, which was way behind Moonlight Gardens. And in that woods, we had a lot of animation in there of Indians and cabins and shooting at settlers, and it was wildly popular. No one in those days had seen animation. Very few people had gone to Disneyland. I mean, it was way across the country. Basically, people in our region in the Midwest hadn't seen it. So this little train ride, I think we rode 400,000 people that year. It increased Coney's attendance. So we knew the popularity of that. All we did when we went to Kings Island and get a larger train, and we still had the same animation. People were shooting at each other, and the kids loved it.
Well, the Beast actually, as we developed roller coasters, we decided to build that in-house. And we had a very talented team of staff who really understood the roller coasters and had learned as they built the Racer and had worked on some of the other coasters in the park. So although we had a lot of land at Kings Island, 1,500 acres, I believe it was, we decided to use the terrain. So we used the natural terrain. And it was the first time that a coaster was really, in modern time, was built to the terrain. And we used that back section of Kings Island. So the Beast was the longest, fastest roller coaster that was built at that time. And in my opinion, and I've ridden most of them around the world, it's still the greatest coaster. It's got all the wonderful features that you want. The whoop-de-doos, the 2 drops, and of course the tunnel.
Well, my first ride on the Beast was shortly after they took the sandbags off of it for testing. So in 1979, they opened the Beast. They let some of the workers ride it, some of the upper personnel. I was just a kid there, really basically in my second season at Kings Island, and I was lucky enough to be doing setup for the park that day and got to go ride it. It was like nothing I'd ever ridden before. I thought it was probably one of the best rides I'd ever ridden. Still to this day, it is one of my top rides. It was the tallest, the highest, the fastest. It was mean. And I think the thing I remember the most is I kept thinking, how did this happen? How did they build this right into the woods? Everywhere it's built into the forest. And then one employee night, I got to ride it at night. And they turned all the lights out on the thing. And we kept riding it and riding it and riding it. So we would go right through the train station. I think we rode it about 12 times in a row before somebody probably screamed "Uncle," and they stopped the ride. But I can tell you what, it was one of the most scariest rides at night when you cannot see a turn, you can't see a hill, you can't see anything. It was phenomenal night. If anybody ever gets a chance to ride it at night, to me, that was a great, great ride at night.
On the Beast, when we were building it, it was in the spring of 1979, 8 or 9, whenever we opened that, we decided to go down one night. We were having a meeting in the park, and we decided to go down and light it up. So we decided to take it out for a test try. And really, no one had ridden it at that point in time. And there were a group of about 10 of us. We fired it up, got on it, took off, and when we hit that tunnel, there were no check brakes or any kind of other than the main brakes on that system. And we went through that tunnel, and we thought we were going to explode and come through the tunnel. When we came back, we were all absolutely white and scared to death. And we said, what did we create? And if you ride the ride today, well, immediately following that, we put the check brakes going down the hill to slow that car down going into the tunnel. But all the conditions were right that night. It was a light rain. It was there were no brakes. It was just fast. And I'll never forget that night. And I don't think anybody who rode it that night with me will forget that night. We were all pretty shocked, and we knew we'd created something that was really special. And it remains in the top 10 coasters today.
In Rivertown, when I worked there, I did take the old-time photos, but to the right of me and to the left of me, we had a wood carver that carved wood. You know, he would have plaques made, just married, and all kinds of things you could have done. And on the other side were the leather workers. They would make leather belts. They'd put your name on it, or leather key fobs, things like that. So during the summer, I would say it's like the summer of 1980, we were all on the front porch together a lot. We all hung out a lot. We went out after work for pizza a lot. And we always felt sorry for this one particular guy that worked at the wood carving place, because he was like the only high school kid that worked there. The rest were retired people or married people with families, you know, responsible people. So we brought him over. We drug him around everywhere. We just called him Woody the Wood Carver. We didn't know who he was. He was quiet. He wore glasses. He read a lot. So anyway, we drug him around to parties and to go get pizza. And he had a big car, so we let him drive us around a lot. We had a lot of fun with him. So Woody came and left after a few seasons, and I remember a few years later, 5 or 6 years later, me and my roommate were down at UC at our apartment, and we were watching a TV show. I said, man, that guy looks familiar. It happened to be Cheers at the time. I said, I've talked to him. I know him. He doesn't look anything. I can't picture him. Years later, we figured out it was Woody Harrelson. So we thought we called him Woody. I think Woody was his real name, but we called him Woody the Woodcarver. That's how we knew him. So he was the guy we hung around with.
This historic part of the park reminds every visitor who strolls through here that Cincinnati has and always will be a river town. Rivertown holds a special place in my heart. When I hear the whistle blowing of that powerful locomotive, it brings the past into the present and keeps memories alive.